How you doing there? Oh, friends, you know how tired I am? I'm very tired. So you know what I'm doing about it? I make coffee. I'm gonna have coffee, Lemaisa. Excuse me. Coffee. Oh my gosh. What number of coffee is this today? What time is it? It's like almost 2 p.m. This must be 5. But I think I had 4 coffee. I had 4 coffee. I had 4 coffees today before 8:30 in the morning. So my 5th was only at, what's it, like 2 o'clock? Alright, it's not bad. What do you want me to tell you? Alright, Lemaisa, I'm probably gonna have another one. What do you want me to tell you? Alright, friends, welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Daled, Daf 64 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, another gewaltige Daf over here. I don't know, it talks about interesting stuff. What do you want me to tell you? Let's go weiter. So we're, gewaltig. So we're on Daf Samach. Let me take a little more coffee. Chaim, friends, everybody feel free to pause the podcast and take your own coffee and say L'chaim with me, L'chaim. Coffee, Geschmack, Mshuk Machne Yehuda. So, okay. So says the Gemara in Daf Samach Gimel Bey is about, 8-10 lines from the bottom. Amar Rav Asi says, Rav Asi Ein Ben David Ba Ad Shichlu Kol Neshama Shebeguf. We saw this, what did we say this? Yesterday? That, 2 days ago, I think, that Mashiach is going to come when all of the souls in this place called Guf. What does Rashi say? Rashi says Guf Pargod Shechotzeitz Ben Shechina LeMelachim. Some curtain that separates between Shechina and the angels. V'sham Ruchis and Neshamis Nesunis Shenivu Misheshis Mebreshis. All these souls and spirits that were created from the 6 days of creation, Hasidos Linosim Begufim Hasidim Libaros, that are going to be placed in all of the bodies that will be created. Sounds very interesting, right? Anyways, so in each one of us, we have a soul from the guf, from this place. So when all of those souls get emptied out of this place called guf, so then Mashiach comes. Shenemar, the Pasuk says, Kirach milafana Yaatov, Neshamasana Yosisi. The spirit before mine will get wrapped up and make souls. Alright. I'm going to drink my coffee. Chaim. Let's go weiter. Tani, we're learning Rabbi Eliezer, Mrs. Rabbi Eliezer, Kol Misha Ein Osek B'Firya V'Rivya. Anybody who doesn't have children, doesn't make children, Ki'ilu Shofech Dam. It's as if he's committing murder. Shnamar, the Pasuk says, Shofech Ha'adam B'Adam Dam Yishofech. The Pasuk talks about murder. It says, right after Vatim Puravu, and then go have children. So it's Ki'ilu, if you don't have children, so Memele, it's like you're a murderer. Biankiv Omis says, Biankiv Ki'ilu Memai Tatmus. It's as if he's like diminishing the divine form. Shenemar, the Pasuk says, Kibitzelim Elokim also Sodom, that he made man in the divine form. And then it says, be fruitful and multiply. So if you're not fruitful and multiply, if you're not fruitfully multiplying, so then you're diminishing the divine form. Benazai Omer says Benamai. It says Benazai, Kilu Shoifech Labim Umimai Tadmus. Says Benazai, it's actually like he's spilling blood and diminishing the divine form. Shenemar, the Pasuk says Vatim Puravu. After both of these things, it says be fruitful and multiply. Amrul Benazai. Of course, they said the Benazai because of course Benazai was not married. Yishno Dorish V'no Mekayim. They said to him, look, some people they can give a beautiful droshe, and they also actually practice what they preach. Those are people who know how to practice, but they don't necessarily preach. But at least they do. They're lemaisa people. They do stuff. You Benazai, on the other hand, you give beautiful drushes, but you don't fulfill them. Benazai wasn't married, so meaning Benazai had this very fancy drusha that a fellow doesn't have children, right? He's not fruitfully multiplying, So then it's like he's murdering and diminishing the divine spirit. He himself wasn't fruitfully multiplying. You know what Ben Azai says to them, friends? What can I do? Shenafshi choshka batere. That my soul desires the study of Torah, that it entirely preoccupies me. Other people could fruitfully multiply. What can I do? My soul so much desires to study the Holy Torah that I can't be involved in fruitfully multiplying. Tanidach, we learn in another brayso, Rabbi Eliezer says, a fellow who does not involve himself in fruitfully multiplying, it's as if he's a murderer. That a fellow who commits murder, and then it says afterwards fruitfully multiply. Okay, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah it's as if he is diminishing the divine form. Right? So Levenazai says it's like both, and they say no. No adorish v'no mekayim, yesh no mekayim ve'in no adorish, v'ata no adorish ve'in no mekayim. Friends, I'm going to chap a shtick of coffee. Please join me. The Maisa, yesterday I had a coffee at, what time did I have a coffee? Very late in the day. Usually I don't drink coffee. What time is it? Oh, it's like 2 o'clock. This is already on the later end of things for me, for coffee drinking consumption, but I'll tell you something, it's a Friday today, so the Maisa, I need to keep the gears turning a little bit longer today. Anyways. But yesterday I was at a friend's house. The Maisa, don't worry, I wasn't having fun or anything. we were talking about business, I was getting some advice. And then he made me a coffee, I couldn't turn it down. It was like probably 5 p.m. or later. But the Maisa, I don't think I had a problem sleeping. The thing is, I didn't sleep enough. That's the thing. I haven't been sleeping so much. I schedule my first groove of the day every day, 3:30 in the morning. This is my first groove. I have it scheduled. So this morning I woke up at 3. I was partially exhausted, but what was I going to do? I had something on my calendar already for 3:30. What can I tell you? Gets you out of bed. But the Maisa I was today very tired. I'm usually not so tired. Today I'm tired. That explains 5 coffees. Weiter. And then when the Aron rests, so it says, return, O God, the myriads and thousands of Israel, that the divine presence rests upon no less than 22,000 Yidden. Now what if there were 21,999 Yidden? And you have one fellow there who didn't fruitfully multiply. This fellow is responsible for the fact that there's no divine presence among Israel because he didn't fruitfully multiply. Abu Chanan Omer says, Abu Chanan, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Chayiv Misa. All right. What do you want me to tell you? What do you want me to tell you? Abu Chanan Omer says, Abu Chanan, Mishum Rabbi Eliezer Chayiv Misa. If you don't fruitfully multiply, you're obligated to go to Wellwood. Shenema, as the pasuk says, Uvanim lohayu loyim, that Nadav and Avihu, they died and they didn't have any children. Hahayu loyim banim lo mesu. But if they would have had children, then they wouldn't have died. Hacherim Eimrim, Gerim l'shchinish t'stalik misrael, that a fellow who doesn't fruitfully multiply, he causes the divine presence to leave Israel. Shenema, as the pasuk says, Lios lelokim l'zarech l'achorecha, to be for you a God and for your children afterwards. When your children are after you, so then there's the divine presence. But if your children are not following you, then who's the Eibishter going to rest his divine presence on sticks and stones? Alright, what do you want me to tell you? Fruitfully multiplying. Says the Mishnah, Nosa Isha V'Shah Ima Eser Shanim V'Lo Yalda. Okay, so what if you have a married couple? They're married for 10 years and they haven't had any children. Enu Rashi Levato. So the fellow needs to try other avenues to fruitfully multiply, either marry another wife or get divorced and then marry another wife. Okay. Gersha, now if they get divorced, she's allowed, she can go now marry somebody else. Even though they didn't succeed in having children together, maybe somebody else will be able to have children with her. And then she could remain married to the second person for 10 years as well. And if she at any point during those 10 years did conceive but had a miscarriage, so then the 10 years starts over. Excuse me. Coffee. Not so much left. Alright, fine. Tanur Rabbanan says, so now says the Gemara, so if you have a married couple and they've been married for 10 years, and unfortunately they didn't marry to have any children, so they get divorced and the husband pays his ex-wife their ksube. Shema lozach libanus mimena, because she deserves her ksuba, because maybe she was able to have children for whatever reason. He just wasn't able to. It wasn't him who was able to have children with her. And even though we don't have a proof for this, so there's an allusion that it says that after 10 years since Avram and Sarai were in Eretz Yisrael, so after 10 years they still didn't have any children, so that is when Hagar was introduced. And the reason why it mentioned 10 years after coming to Eretz Yisrael is to indicate that any time that they were married before they got to Eretz Yisrael would not count. Okay, fine. Therefore, meaning the point being that if there are other factors that we could rely upon to explain or to sort of rule out their not having children, so we can rely upon that. So therefore, for example, chalahu, if he was sick, or or maybe she was sick, or shneim chavushim v'esasurim, if they were both in jail, ein on loy min haminin. That doesn't count for the 10 years. Right? If there are other things that you can kind of say, look, maybe the reason why there was no children was for this reason or for that reason, so then, you can rely upon those to say that the 10 years don't count. Amalei Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman v'leilef mi Yitzchak. How come learn out from Avram that it was 10 years? Learn out from Yitzchak that it's 20 years. The pasuk says, "Vayi Yitzchak ben Arboim Shana." That Yitzchak was 40 years old. B'kachtos Rivka when he married Rivka v'Gomer. Uchsev Yitzchak ben Shishim Shana b'ledes Osam. And Yitzchak was 60 years old when Yaakov and Esav were born. So it took 20 years for Yaakov and Esav to be born. Amalei Yitzchak Oker Hoya. So Rav Nachman says, well, Yitzchak knew that the reason why they didn't have children was because he was unable to have children. It wasn't because Rivka was unable to have children, and therefore they didn't need to get divorced, or he didn't need to try to marry somebody else to have children. He knew that he wasn't able to have children. But Avram also knew that he was unable to have children. So why did he? So therefore, what's there to learn from that? So he says, look, when it comes to Yitzchak, the 20 years thing is actually like Reb Chia bar Abba, the Reb Chia bar Abba, Reb Yochanan lamanim l'shnosav shel Yishmael k'dei leyachis ben shnosav shel Yaakov. The reason why the years of Yishmael are mentioned in order to understand the years of Yaakov, and we learned in Masechet Megillah about those 20 years, right? That basically to learn from that the 20 years that Yaakov was by Shem and Aver, he wasn't. What was it? No, how long was he by Shem and Aver? 14 years. Whatever, the time that he was by Shem and Aver didn't count. And so therefore, we need the pasuk of 20 years by Yitzchak in order to use that for calculations. But the 10 years in the case of Avram, even though yes, he was unable to have children, and therefore, there would be no reason anyways to have to find, to have another wife and have children. But nonetheless, that pasuk of 10 years is extra by Avram, right? Meaning if you know that it's you who's unable to have children, so then it's not like after 10 years marrying somebody else is going to make a difference. But the pasuk is extra by Avram to teach that in a case where it's possible that you can have children with somebody else, so then that pasuk teaches that after 10 years you should try having children with somebody else. Omer Yitzchak says Yitzchak Avinu Oker Hoya, that Yitzchak Avinu was unable to have children at least for those 20 years. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Ve'oser Yitzchak LaHashem V'nochach Yishto. That Yitzchak David Vayetar, that Yitzchak prayed to God opposite his wife. Ali Shtola Nemar, it doesn't say about his wife. It's not that Rivka was unable to have children, but Elenochach that they would daven together, that both of them were unable to have children. If that's the case, well, if they both were unable to have children and they were both davening to be able to have children, so why does the pasuk say that the Eibush should listen to him? It should be that the Eibush should listen to both of them. Because the prayer, the efficacy of a prayer of a tzaddik, the son of a tzaddik, is stronger than that of a tzaddik, the son of a rasha. And of course, Rivka's father was Lavan, so therefore the Eibishter listened to Yitzchak's tefillah, which was a tefillah tzaddik ben tzaddik, and that was the one that was listened to in this instance. How come our fathers were unable to have children? Because the Eibishter desires the prayers of the righteous. How come the prayers of the righteous are compared to a pitchfork? So just like a pitchfork moves around the wheat, moves around the grain from this place to that place, also the prayers of the righteous move around the attributes of the Eibishter, from attributes of anger and upsetness to attributes of kindness and mercy. Avram v'Sara tumtmin hoyu. So it says Rav Ami that Avram and Sarah were tumtums. Shenemar, the pasuk says, "Yivitu al tzur chotzavtem v'almakeves bor nukartem." Go and look to your rock that you came from, and from the hole that you came from. Yivitu el Avram avichem v'Sara tcholelchem. Look to Avram and Sarah. I.e., this rock and this hole is referring to Avram and Sarah to teach that like they initially were like a rock and like a hole. Kilu Pasha, just unable to have children. Like physically unable to have children, but a miracle happened and they were able to have children. The Eibishter helped out. Omer of Nachman Baravua Sari Menu Ilonis Hoiso, that Sari Menu was in Ilonis. Shenemaz, as the pasuk says, Evati Sari Akore Ein Lo Volod Afilu Beis Volod Ein, that Sarah didn't even have a womb, so she was an Ilonis. Omer V'Yehuda B'Eder of Shmuel Bashilas Mishmei Derav Loshon Ela B'Doros Harishonim. When the Mishnah says that they could stay married for 10 years until the man needs to make other arrangements for fruitfully multiplying, that is only in the earlier years, Sheshnoseim Rubis, where they lived for longer. But in the later generations where people don't live as long, you only have 2.5 years. After 2.5 years, you have to marry somebody else. You have to make another arrangement for fruitfully multiplying keneged shlosha iburim, like the equivalent of 3 pregnancies, which is 9 times 3, which is 27, plus 1 month in between each one. So that's 30 months, which is 2.5 years. Rabba Omer Rav Nachman shalosh shanim keneged shalosh pkidos. Rabba says in the name of Rav Nachman that you have 3 years before you have to make other arrangements for fruitfully multiplying. Keneged, the 3 women who were remembered on Rosh Hashanah, the Omer Mar. Rosh Hashanah nifkedu Sarah, Rachel, v'Chana. That in Rosh Hashanah, Sarah, Rachel, and Chana were remembered to have children. Rabbi lesnu lahani klali. Rabbi says no, that this isn't the case. Rather, it's still even nowadays 10 years. Mirde masnisin man talking. No, who collated, who edited the Mishnayos? Rebbe did. The Rabbi made David imut, and already way before Rebbe, during the times of David, already the year, right, people started living shorter lives. And still, Rebbe said that it's 10 years, not 2.5 or 3 years. The pasuk says, that it says in Tehillim that people live for 70 years. V'hai Shem lo zoch libanu seimeno v'dilma ihi dlo zachyo. Now, Frekti Gemara, if we look at the Brisa right at the beginning of the if we look at the very beginning of the Gemara, it says, "No, so isha v'sha ima eser shanim." If they were married for 10 years, v'lo yaldan, they didn't have any children. Yotzi b'yitin ksubis, so they get divorced, and he pays her ksubis Shem lo zoch libanu seimeno, because maybe it's not her fault. Maybe it was his fault. Maybe he's the one who was unable to have children, therefore she deserves her ksubah. But but maybe it was she. Maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it was her fault, and she doesn't deserve to get her marriage document when they get divorced. So, however, since, as we're going to learn in the Mishnah tomorrow, since she doesn't have the mitzvah of puravu, so therefore she can't be punished for it. Ini, is that really true that he should get remarried to another woman? Is but the rabbi said to Rabbi Bar Zavda, "Nisiv it's of olid bnei, no, get married to another woman and see if you can have children together." When he said to them, "No, if I would have married it, I would have children from my first wife." So we see that Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda is saying that there's no need to marry another wife to try to fruitfully multiply. No, Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda really was just, kind of pushing off the rabbis who were asking him. The Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda, the Rabbi Abba Bar Zavda became sterile because of the Torah discourses of Rav Huna, that, as we learned the other day, that Rav Huna would give very long discourses, and the people would have to pish, but they would hold it in, and it caused them to become sterile. Rav Gidel Yakim Pirkei Rav Huna. Also, Rav Gidel became sterile because of the discourse of Rav Huna. Rav Chabo Yakim Pirkei Rav Huna. Rav Chabo also became sterile because of the discourse of Rav Huna. Rav Sheshes Yakim Pirkei Rav Huna. And of course, as we learned the other day, Rav Sheshes also became sterile because of the discourses of Rav Huna. Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Achdose, so Schrinto, Rav Acha Bar Yaakov was starting to come to get sick because of these long discourses of Rav Huna. Talyua ba'arza devei Rav, so they hung him by the cedars of the Beis Hamedrash, and that apparently helped. V'nofik minek yehutza yarka, some green emission came out of him, and that was kind of saved his life. Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, says Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, Shisin Save Avino, there were 60 elders there. V'chulu Iyakur Mipirkei Rav Huna, all of them became sterile on account of the discourses of Rav Huna. Devami Ono, but not me. The Kaima ben Afshoy, that I established with myself, Achochmas Chayei Baileo, that the wisdom will keep its people alive. And says Rav Acha Bar Yaakov, that I managed by hanging myself from the cedars of the study hall and having some green emission come out of me, I managed to save myself from becoming sterile. Now the Mishnah had said Gershim Muteres v'chule, that so if they get divorced, so then she can now marry somebody else. So now says the Gemara, right, and then it says that if they're not having children, so they could stay for together for the second. Oh man, I gotta chill out this thing. It's pinging. Yeah, Susan sounds awesome. Yeah, Susan's pretty cool. Alright, let's go weiter. So Gershom, right, so we said that she could stay with the second husband for 10 years as well. Sheni in, Shlishi lo. Yeah, the second husband, but not the third. Masni Simani Rebbe. So this is like Rebbe, who says that a chazaka is established after 2. Okay, and therefore if she's married to 2 husbands, and unfortunately she's unable to have children with either one of them, so then at that point it's been established as a chazaka that she's not going to be able to have children, and therefore she wouldn't necessarily, or at least a third person who needs to fruitfully multiply they would not get married, because I guess the assumption is that he wouldn't be able to fruitfully multiply with her. The Tana's we learn in a Brisa, Mola Arishin Vomes, if you have a mother and she gives birth to a few boys, and the first boy she circumcised, but he died. Sheni Vames, and the second son as well died. Shlishi Lo Simo Divi Rebbe. So Rebbe says, so don't do bris milah with the third child because it's already a chazaka after two. Reb Shimon ben Yochai Omer Shlishi Timo Revi Lo Timo. Says Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, no, the third one also should do bris milah, but not the fourth. Meaning, if three children died from bris milah, so then don't do it on the fourth one. So okay, so Rebbe says chazaka is after two. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that the chazaka is after three. But 1 second, we have a brayso that teaches the opposite. That Rebbe says three and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says two. So the Gemara says, okay, well, how do we resolve this? Well, whichever one was later, right? Whichever Mishnah or whichever one was later is essentially the authoritative one, right? Meaning, if we had an earlier source and then a later source, so whatever mistake may have been made in the earlier one, the second one would be the authoritative one. 1 second. Okay, fine. Okay. Shema coming here. Oh, so it says Rabbi Bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Now, Rashi points out that Rabbi Yochanan was an Amora, right? He was an early Amora, but he was an Amora nonetheless. So if we have Rabbi Yochanan testifying about this machlokes about Rabbi Bar Abba, about Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rebbe, so then that must have been the later one. So Rabbi Bar Abba Rabbi Yochanan says Rabbi Bar Abba in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that there was a story with 4 sisters in Tzipori, Shemola Rishona Vames, Shnia Vames, Shlishis Vames, that the first sister had a boy and they did bris milah and the child passed away. The second sister had a boy and the child passed away. The third sister had a boy and the child passed away from bris milah. Revius Bas Lefnei Rabban Shimon Gamliel. And the fourth sister then also had a boy and she came to Shimon Gamliel to ask what she should do. Omerla, and he said to her, Al Tamuli, do not do bris milah with your child because your other 3 sisters, they did bris milah with their son and the son passed away. So what do we see? So we see that Rabbi Yochanan is testifying about this story with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Now, if Rabbi Yochanan would have overlapped at all with Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, it would have definitely been later in his life, which means that this would have been this is the later one, and this is the authoritative opinion. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is saying that 3 is a chazaka, and that's why the fourth sister should not do bris milah with her son. V'dilma I asur shlishis nami hava omar lo. So the Gemara says, wait, but that's not necessarily a proof. Maybe Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Taka would have said that after 2 it's a chazaka, and even if the third sister would have come to ask him, he would have said, don't do bris milah because 2 is a chazaka already. Imke maya sadu say Rabbi Bar Abba. But if that's the case, then what's the chiddush of Rabbi Bar Abba? The chiddush of Rabbi Bar Abba, if he's teaching something that we can't actually learn anything out from, so what's the point? Meaning, if we're going to say, okay, there was a nice story where Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, don't do bris milah, and it was the fourth sister, but it doesn't actually teach us anything because theoretically, maybe if it was the third one, he would have also said that. Then what's he teaching us? Maybe this is what it's teaching, the achayos mechazkos. Maybe the chiddush here is that even though it's 4 separate sisters, that is still enough to establish chazaka, right? I understand if you have one mother and she has 1 son who passes away, a second son passes away, a third son passes away, right? It's all by the same person. But over here it's 4 separate sisters, and yet we're still saying that it aggregates to create a chazaka. Maybe that's the chiddush. Okay, so therefore, maybe it isn't necessarily authoritative if we pass in like Rebbe or Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, or really if Rebbe is saying 2 and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is saying 3, or if it's vice versa. So now that we're saying that a chazaka could be established with sisters, so a person should not marry a woman from a family of epileptics, not from a family of lepers. If they have a chazaka, right? So meaning, if in the family there is a history of, right, 3 of the sisters suffer from leprosy, so then you have to be concerned that the 4th sister does as well. So how do we paskin? that says of Yitzchak bar Yosef that there was a story with Rabbi Yochanan in the synagogue of Ma'on, B'Yom HaKippurim Shchalios b'Shabbos and Yom Kippur that Taka fell out on Shabbos, U'malu Rishonov Ameis, Shniov Ameis, Shlishis Ba'a Lefonov, and there was a situation where you had a woman who did bris milah with her first son and he passed away, and the second son passed away, and now it was the third son, and it was on Yom Kippur, and it was Shabbos. And they asked Rabbi Yochanan, what should we do? Should we do bris milah today or not? Amar la l'chiyu muli, and Rabbi Yochanan says, yes, do bris milah, because the halacha is that you need 3 to create a chazakah, 2 would not be considered a chazakah. So says Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef that apparently 3 would be a chazakah, not 2. Amalei Abaye, Chazi the Kasharis Yisur v'Sakanta. Abaye says, wow, you're playing with fire there, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. Just, I hope you're aware of the fact that basically by saying this story, you're establishing that the chazakah is 3 to an extent that after 2, you're suggesting that somebody should do bris milah for this child. If you're not right, well then you're being Mechal Shabbos, and you're also putting a child in danger, because if the chazakah was already after 2, then you shouldn't be doing bris milah, because it's a chazakah that this child might die. So not only are you being Mechal Shabbos, right, not only are you sort of facilitating Chilul Shabbos, but also it's dangerous if this child, if we have to be concerned about a chazakah. So Abaye is just kind of pointing that out, that like, alright, that's, just be careful, because, if this child, we do bris milah on this child, and he dies or whatever, and he shouldn't have been done, or, that wouldn't be good. So Machala Abaye, so now Abaye, after pointing that out, he then said, but the fact of the matter is, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef said this story from Rabbi Yochanan to prove that a chazakah would be after 3, so guess what happened? So Abaye says, alright, well I guess a chazakah is after 3. So he went and he married Choma, the daughter of Isi Breda of Yitzchak Breda of Yehuda, and she was married, Choma was married to Rachba from Pumbedisa, and he died. Of Yitzchak Breda Rabba bar Chana v'Shachib, she was also married to Rav Yitzchak Breda Rabba bar Chana, he died. V'Nosbahu, and Abaye married her as well, v'Shachiv, and he died. So interestingly, that apparently the chazakah there with Choma, that her husbands tend to die, was established after 2, and Abaye figured that it was 3, so he then married her, but then he died. And Rava says, I don't understand, how could Abaye have done such a silly thing? Abaye himself said that you could rely upon Reb Oven, that if Reb Oven says something in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, you can rely upon that, but if Reb Yitzchak bar Yosef says something in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, you cannot necessarily rely upon it. Oven yeshna b'chazorah. Oven would he would do a lot of chazara, or he was just always with Rabbi Yochanan, so if Rabbi Yochanan would have retracted on something, he would know about it, but basically, Oven, Reb Oven, you can always rely upon when it comes to Rabbi Yochanan. Yitzchak sumcha eno b'chazor, whereas Yitzchak bar Yosef wasn't, doesn't have that same level of authority in quoting Rabbi Yochanan's teachings. And additionally, says Rava, while there's this machlokas by Mila, if it's after 2 chazakah or 3 after a chazakah, but maybe by Nisuin, everyone agrees that it's after 2. So Rava says, I don't understand why Abaye took such a risk by marrying Choma after 2 of her previous husbands had already died. So the Gemara says, yes, well, actually by Nisuin, it is also machlokas v'atanis, we learn in the Brisa, Nises l'rishon v'meis, l'sheni v'meis, l'shlishi lo tinoset v'Rebbe, that Rebbe says that if you have a woman who is married to 2 husbands and they both died, so then she shouldn't get married to a third, according to Rebbe, because she already has a chazak after 2. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, l'shlishi tinase, l'revi lo tinase, she can marry a 3rd husband, but don't marry a 4th, because after 3 is a chazaka. B'shlomo gabe mila, ika mishpacha d'rafi dama, v'ika mishpacha d'kamed dama. So it says the Gemara, look, I understand why you can have a chazaka by mila, because you could have a family that they just, their blood doesn't clot properly, and therefore and that's established after either 2 or after 3 children, that like, okay, there's a medical condition here, and therefore, be careful. But El Nisu in my time, but what exactly is the concern by marriage? That what, like after, like what exactly are we establishing? If you have a woman who's married to 2 men and they both die, what exactly are we establishing a chazaka that what? So Amar Rav Motche Rav Ashi says, Motche to Rav Ashi Achi Amar Avimi me'agronio mishmei Rav Huna mayun gorim. Rav Ashi Amar mazel gorim. That it could be that maybe maybe some kind of sexually transmitted disease or something, that kilu, maybe she has some kind of condition where when some kind of disease is transferred to her partner. And Rav Ashi Omar Mazel Gorim. Rav Ashi says that it's some kind of constellation of sorts that could cause it. Okay, and I guess that's established after machlokas, either 2 or 3 times. My binai, what's an afkamina if it's some kind of disease or some kind of constellation? Or is there a different word for constellation? I feel like there is, but vibe, sign. I feel like you hear a lot about your sign. Am I Capricorn? I think it's what I am. My say. My benau, what's an afkamina? Ki benau the heirs of a miss. Inam enough of miss. Well, what if she got engaged twice and the fellow died? So it wouldn't be a sexually transmitted disease, but it would. But there's some kind of bad sign, or if like he fell out of a tree and died. So again, bad vibes, but not some kind of disease. Amar le Rav Yosef Brei Dirave says Rav Yosef Brei Dirave Tirave. By Minei Rav Yosef Ataka Rav Yosef Halacha ki Rabbi. Is the halacha like Rabbi v'amali in? He says, yeah, the halacha is like Rabbi. Halacha Rav Shimon Gamliel v'amali in. I said, is the halacha like Rav Shimon Gamliel? He says, yeah, it's like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Achuchi achukbi. Seems like he's messing with me. I understand. I says the halacha like Rabbi. He says, yeah, the halacha is like Rabbi. Is the halacha like Rav Shimon Gamliel? Yeah, the halacha is like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Well, it can't be like both of them. So Amalei Stami. So Rav says to Rav Yosef Brei Rav that look. There are different stamishnas that we're relying upon. Ufashilach nisuin umalkios kirebi vestos v'shamud kireb mishum gamliel. He says, look, when it comes to marriage and when it comes to malchus, which we'll explain in a minute, it's like Rebbe that chazaka is established after 2. When it comes to veses, like a woman's period, and shor amud, an ox that gores, so then it's established by 3. What does this mean? So right, then it's like that it's established by 3. Nisuin odamarn. So marriage, that which we said, right? If you have a woman who gets married and the husband dies, so after 2 it would be considered a chazaka. Malkias, when it comes to lashing, flogging, the Tanan is within a Mishnah, Mishalaka v'shana, bezdin konson also lechipa. Ooh, that's bad news. If you have a fellow who got whipped, he did something that would be chayiv kares, and I guess they warned him that he was going to get malkias, so we whip him. And then he does it again. So then, after 2 times already, we put him into the kippah. Friends, you know what the kippah is? Friends, you don't want to go to the kippah. Stay out of the kippah. Also, they put him in some small confined space, and they just feed him raw barley until his stomach splits and he dies. Friends, I don't want you to eat barley until your stomach splits and dies. Vestos, women's period. That a woman sort of establishes when her period will be when she sees it at the same time 3 months in a row. And if the day of her period changes, so it would have to change 3 times in order for it to be established as the new day. And also a warned ox. Titnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, in a shor nice amud, that an ox is considered a warned ox as opposed to an unwarned ox once it's been warned 3 times. Friends, that was Daf Samach Daled of Masechta Yevamos. So we saw some interesting things in Daf Samach Daled of Masechta Yevamos. Right, we saw all that stuff about people who don't have children. We saw that thing about Ben Azai, right? He gave this elaborate drush about how it's really bad to not have children, and saying, hey, Ben Azai, excuse me, but you don't have children. He says, what can I do? I love learning Torah. Let other people have children. We talked about people are married for 10 years, they don't have children, so then the fellow should try to make another plan for how to fruitfully multiply. We saw a bunch of stuff like that, and then we saw a famous machlokas between Rebbe and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, his father, about is a chazaka established after 2 or is it established after 3? And it seems like it depends for what. Rebbe said for Nisun and for Malchus it's 2. It's like Rebbe, and when it comes to Veses, and when it comes to Shor Mud, it's 3, like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Friends, peace out, bye.